Okay, so what I'm going to do in this video is have a bit of a play around in Blender, work with textures. I'm going to create a brick texture using nodes that actually come with Blender, a node that comes with Blender, which is actually a brick image, but it's a procedural brick texture creation through nodes. We'll get into that as we go through it. I'm going to be using some add-ons here in Blender, which I've got. Some are paid, some are not. Just to kind of speed up the process a little bit. But I just figured I would have a bit of a play around here in Blender, hit record, bring you guys along. You might get something out of it, you might not, but I figured, I may as well share it and see what happens. So what I'm going to do here, let's put some screencast keys on so you can actually see what's going on. And then I'm going to Shift A Mesh Plane. By the way, I'm actually using 2.93.1 version of Blender. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch over to, or I'm going to open up another window, click and drag, and switch over to the shader editor in this window. I'm going to add a material to the plane here. And what I want to do here is add in a brick texture node. So we go Shift A, texture, brick texture. As I said, this comes with Blender. You don't have to activate anything. It just is there by default. There's quite a lot of different procedural textures here to work with, but this is a really good one. Obviously, if you want to make brick textures, there's a lot of values in here that you can play around with. I'm not going to get into all of those in the video here. There's we'll just go over them very, very quickly, but I don't tend to mess about these top ones here too much because that tends to kind of break things for me, at least. If I actually connect this up to the principal BSDF shader, I've got a material preview. You can kind of play around with the values here, so you can change the offset of where the bricks are going to be, kind of thing. I tend to keep them somewhere in the middle, but depending on what you're trying to create, you might need to change that. And then obviously you can change the frequency here to whatever you desire. But like I say, it depends on the kind of design of the brick wall you want to go for. But that's something you need to mess about with there. The squash obviously squashes the bricks up so that they get smaller and smaller. But not sure if this has something to do with other values, because obviously if I change this one and then change this one here, that's going to make a big difference as well. But like I said, I tend to keep these somewhere at default and just kind of go with that. Gives me the best results. I can't remember what that one was on now. Let's reset that to default. There we go. So those are the, play around with those values. Then you have some different colors. Now what I want to do here is use this texture here as a temporary height map. So I can use that with Displacement Modifier, which we'll get to when we get to that part. So I want to have, some bricks slightly higher than other bricks, but not to the point where they're stupidly, there's a massive difference between them. Just a little bit of variation, to break up the repetitiveness of it all. So I've got some bricks which are kind of a lightish grey, and then some which are darker grey. Now this is, I believe, some sort of a mix RGB setup within the actual node. So if you change one of them, it will actually affect the other one. They kind of balance each other out, if that makes sense. So that's something again, you'd have to experiment with the colors there, depending on what you want to get. But for my purposes here, as I said, I just want to create or use this image that I'm going to create from this as a temporary height map. Then we have our mortar, which is obviously in black here, and I want the mortar to be slightly lower than the bricks, again because obviously the brick I want to have stand out somewhat from the mortar. So anything that's in black there would be the low point of the height map, and then anything in white will be anything above, the higher point kind of thing. And then we have a scale, so obviously we can scale the size of the entire texture across the mesh here. Forget what that was on now. Reset to defaults. No, that's not going to work, is it? What was that on? I can't remember now. I'll just delete this thing and put a new one in. I can't remember what that was on. 5 was it? Okay, that's fine. I said I wasn't going to go through these, but and then obviously the mortar sizes, yeah, the black part here, can scale that, and then the smoothness of it, the bias. I don't actually know what that does. Oh, I guess it's a color bias against the bricks. I don't know. So kind of a bias of all of the values there, I guess. We'll just keep it something like that. Then brick width and brick height is obvious, or brick width and row height is pretty obvious, I should say, for what you want to do there. I'm actually going to do that again because I want the default values. I don't want that one. But yes, so like I said, I'm just going to stick with the default values here and go with that, as I say, just to get a temporary height map. So what I'm going to do is add a camera. So I'm going to go Shift A, camera, and add that. I'm going to go while on numpad to go into front orthographic. With the camera selected, I'm going to go G and Z just to bring it up above the plane here. Press 0 on my numpad to go into camera view, and I'm just going to close that for now. And then what I need to do is change the camera properties. I'm going to come over to here, object data properties for the camera, and change that. I want to change it from perspective to orthographic, and I also want to change the orthographic scale here down to 2. But this obviously isn't fitting the entire plane here, so I need to change the resolution. So by default for me it's 1920 by 1080. I'm just going to click and drag there and go 2048. So now it fits perfectly around the actual area that I want to work with here. And then all I'm just going to do is come up to view and viewport render image. Can't talk. And I'll get this. So I'm just going to go image, save as. I'll put it on my desktop. Doesn't matter what I call it because it's going to be just a temporary texture. So it'll be deleted anyway afterwards. And I can just get rid of the camera now. I don't need that anymore. And then what I'm going to do is we'll just remove the brick texture node. Don't need that anymore either. And we can go with that. Okay, so now I'm back to just having my simple, straightforward flat plane here. And when you work with displacement, it needs to have quite a lot of geometry, or more geometry than just 4 verts, to actually displace itself. It can't displace very well if you've not got enough geometry. You might get some displacement here, depending on the texture that you're going to use, but it won't be enough for what I want to get out of it. So I'll try and show you what I mean here. So if I go to the modifiers tab here and I add in a displacement modifier, so displace, you can see it's obviously gone up. So it's gone up by a value or strength of 1 in the direction of the normal. If I go back to solid shade mode here, you can see we have, I'll actually turn on backface culling. So this is the side with the normal, and this is the side with no normal, which is why it's transparent. So in the direction of the normal, which is this one here, it's gone up by a value of 1. So in front orthographic, if I change this, obviously it decreases and increases in the direction of the normal, and you can go to negative as well. So for now, we'll just put that back to 1. And what I want to do is displace this using my texture that I just created as a temporary height map. So what I'm going to do is come down to the texture properties and load in my texture. So I'm just going to go new, make sure on image or movie, then we go open, go to desktop and load this in. And as you can see, it's changed again, but the whole plane has moved. Because again, like I said before, it hasn't got enough geometry on the actual mesh to displace according to the texture. So what I need to do is subdivide this to add more geometry in. So I'm going to go into edit mode here. Now I have got several different add-ons, so I've got a pie menu going on. But if you tab into edit mode and then just choose, vert, edge, face, I'll go face. And then I'm going to right click, subdivide. And in the subdivision window here, I'm just going to type in there 100. And as soon as I go back into object mode, you can see it's obviously going to displace somewhat, but that's not enough. There's still not enough geometry there to work with. I've only got 20,000 tries, so it's not enough. 10,000 verts is just not enough to work with here. So what I'm going to do is add in a subdivision surface modifier. And this needs to go above the displace modifier. And I'm going to add in or adjust the levels in the viewport, the subdivision levels in the viewport up to 2. This will give me more than enough geometry. So now I've got 164,000 verts, 326,000 triangles. And I also want to change this to simple, not Catmull-Clark, because with Catmull-Clark what it will do is round off the edges too much, and that's going to distort things a little bit too much for what I need. So I'm just going to switch it over to simple, and that will keep the edges nice and straight. So and I'll show you what I mean. If I actually turn the viewport for the displace modifier off, if I come back into here and go back to Catmull-Clark, you can see here the edges are all rounded off a little bit. We don't want that. I want to keep it nice and simple so it's got the straight edges. Okay, so we'll turn the displace modifier back on. Obviously this is too much, this is too strong, so I need to lower down the value on the strength here to something more appropriate. I already know that 0.02 is a good value, and that gives me a nice brick wall setup geometry wise, because this is all still geometry at the moment. But this would be no good in a game engine because it's just got too many too high poly. It's got too many verts, too many triangles, too many everything basically. So to obviously create a low poly and then use textures to give the desired effect, the illusion of it having this look, but of a much lower poly. That's what we want to do here. So I can't actually work with this with the modifiers live in the stack here because it's not physical geometry. The subdivision surface modifier is basically creating fake geometry, if you like, or temporary geometry to give me the desired effect in the viewport, but it's not actual live geometry yet. So I need to apply the modifiers to obviously get the desired effect that I want. So I'm actually going to apply both of them just so I've got everything set up, and I can then adjust things appropriately from there. So what I'm going to do here is just click apply all. If you want to have this particular menu here, you need to go edit preferences, and then in your add-ons go to interface and turn on the modifier tools. Put a tick in the box and save your preferences, and this will add the special modifiers show, hide, apply selected, which we've got here. Okay, so just going to click apply all, and now everything there is now all live geometry to work with. Okay, now I'm going to need to separate the parts out here to work with the add-on that I want to use called GrabDoc, which is going to generate the textures, the normal map, the occlusion, ambient occlusion, curvature, and another height map. I'm actually going to use create another height map, but it'd be a height map based on the geometry that I've now got here. So it will give me a more accurate representation directly from the geometry. And I also need to create a material ID texture, because I want to then take all of what I've going to create into Quixel Mixer to apply the smart materials that will then give me my brick texture, at least the albedo or diffuse version, the color, if you like, and it will just make it easier to create all that. So I'm going to need to separate the bricks from the mortar so that I can do that. And also I would like to have perhaps maybe half a dozen bricks slightly different to all the others, again just to break up the repetitiveness of it all, so they'll be a slightly different color. So we're just going to kind of try and do that if we can. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use an array modifier to kind of cheat a little bit to save me having to select all of the faces here for the mortar or the bricks and then separate everything, because that would take quite a lot of time to do that. So what I'm actually going to do is in here I'm going to tab into let's go into face select, and then I'm going to Alt A to deselect everything. I'm going to press hold down left Alt and click here, and that will do a loop select, so it will select all of those edges across there, faces. Then go X and delete all those faces. And the reason why I do that is because now it's actually separated the mesh. They're no longer joined together, even though it's a single mesh. The geometry is not all joined together anymore because it's got this break where I've deleted those faces. That then gives me the ability to press L by hovering over these parts and do a select link on all of these parts here, and then go X and delete those faces. That's just a quicker way of getting rid of all that. So then what I want to do is I'm going to go into edge mode, so 2 on the keyboard to go into edge mode, and I'm going to hold down Alt and do a loop select of these edges here, and I need to set the origin point to there, so that the array modifier, or the actual array, will start from that point and then go up. If I try and do the array modifier now, it's going to start from the center. I'll show you what I mean. We go back into object mode and I go array. This way it'll work fine, but I believe if I go the other way it won't, so which is the way I want on the y-axis. So if I go 0 and then tab down and go 1, actually it did work. My bad. Didn't think that would work the way I... Anyway, it doesn't matter. That actually worked. I don't know why that did that, but it shouldn't have done that. Interesting. Anyway, it's worked, so that's good. We'll continue on then. So what I need to do here then is I'm going to need to adjust that possibly anyway. I don't know. I've done this a few times now, and used to give me different results every time. So what I need to do here is create 10 counts, because I want to create the entire brick wall again. But you can see here it goes outside of the area that I want to work with. So what I need to do is go back into edit mode and move this edge, this one here, down slightly. So in top down view, 7 on the numpad, we're just going to move that down a little bit to hopefully align this back up. So I'm going to go GY, hold down left shift and just move it into position. Doesn't matter if it goes over a little bit, but somewhere close to where I want it there, like that. That's better. And then we should be good. Okay. That's interesting how that didn't need to reset the origin point. I've always reset the origin point to where I've, want to start the array from, but seems to work here regardless. So that's, I guess that's time saving at if nothing else. So we've now got that set up there, learning new things all the time. And I'm going to turn that off for now, because, or not turn it off, but I'm going to just remove it from the viewport, visibility from the viewport, because again I want to save myself a lot of time here in selecting certain parts. So what I'm going to do is actually mirror this across to the other side, but I need to delete all of this stuff first of all. Well, I don't actually need to, because I can actually do it differently with a biselect, but or a bisect I should say, but I'm going to do that just so that I've not got anything that could cause conflict somewhere. So I'm going to go into edit mode here, and then what I'm going to do is in face select, I'm going to alt click on that one there, and then X, delete the faces, and then I can do a select link of this side and delete those faces. It needs to be on the break here on the y-axis. And then what I can do, go back into object mode, and I'm using hard ops, so I can go Alt X, Alt X, and mirror across like so, and it will automatically give me a mirror modifier. But you could do the same by just going into here and then mirror, and then just, on the X axis. But for me, with hard ops, it's a little bit quicker. So what we also need to do is tidy this bit up here a little bit, because if I can get into the right angle, this part here, again, because of the texture that I used to create the temporary height map, this part here kind of bows a little bit off the edges, and if I try to use that as a tileable texture, I'm going to have something on the ends here that just won't look right. You'll have this weird effect in the brick, so it's just not going to look right. Well, I don't really want to do that. No, I'm just going to, I might be able to do that. Let's just see if I go array, I might be able to show you that. I'm not sure, because I've got mirror modifiers and all sorts going on now. It might not give me the desired effect. So that I want to get to show you. No, that's okay. Doesn't matter. We'll continue on. But if you look at here, This actually doesn't look as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's actually quite straight, to be honest with you. Just, again, you know, no matter how many times I do this, every time I get a different result. I'm going to do it anyway, just for the sake of doing it, so that I know it's right. So what I want to do here is basically delete this loop, face loop here. And because it's on a mirror modifier, it will do the other side for me. And then what I'm going to do is just go X and delete those faces. 2 on the keyboard to go to edge select. I'm going to select that edge, Alt and click to do an edge loop select on that one there. I'm just going to go EX and just bring it out just past the point on the grid here. Now I know that that is completely flat to give me the result that I want. So I should be able to now tile that. Once I create the texture, it will be a tileable texture without any glitches in there. That's the plan anyway. Okay. So now what I can do is in edit mode, I've got very little to actually select. If I was trying to do this across the whole existing geometry, it would take me way longer. So what I can do now is come in here and Alt click, Shift Alt click to do a loop select of those faces. I can do the same on this one down here, Shift Alt and click, and this one and this one. Lets me do that. There we go. And then the other ones, let me just do these ones here again because it deselected those. There we go. So I'll do that one. Then what I'll be able to do now then is just these ones here. I can just press C to do circle select and do that. And same with this one here. Scroll on the mouse wheel to make my circle a little bit smaller to get into there. And select all of that like so. And this will obviously be the mortar. So once I've got all of these selected, I'm going to create a material and assign just the selected parts, the mortar, to that material. And that will give me greater control over it later on. So now that I've got all of those parts selected there, if I had to do all of that, select all the mortar over that entire, you know, original geometry, that would take me forever. But by doing it this way, with the stack, the modifiers still live in the stack here, what I can do is come to the modifiers tab, the materials tab, sorry, add a new material, new. So you click plus to add a new line if you like, and then you need to create a new material for that. And I can click assign, and that selected geometry is now assigned to that material. If I do Alt A to deselect everything, then come in here and press select, you can see it's just that part that's going to get selected. Go back to this one here, and that's going to select the bricks for me. And then just rename everything. So I'm just going to call this brick, and this one here will be mortar. Can spell mortar, there we go. So that's that. And then basically what I'm going to do now then, I'm going to bring back the array modifier here. And when I then apply the modifiers, all of them, what I will do is just, let's go file, save as, let's create a new folder here, brick. So save that. So now when I apply those, I will have all the geometry back again. So it's now all live geometry again. But what I'll be able to do now is go into the materials and select just the bricks like so. I've just got the bricks selected, or I can just go to the mortar and select just the mortar, but it's going to select all of it across the whole lot now, because obviously that was generated through the array modifier being live in the stack here. Just saves so much time, and obviously the mirror modifier as well helped cutting down on how much I needed to select. So what I would potentially do now then is to actually select a few odd bricks here, just to kind of, again, give me the ability to change the color of maybe half a dozen of the bricks. So I could just do box select around this one, for example, and then I might sort of say, let's do this one here. So I'll do shift and box select around that one, like so. If you select too much, you always do C for circle select, middle mouse, and just deselect what you don't want to have selected, like so. I think that should be all right. And then we'll do, I don't know, let's see. When I do this, I try not to think about it too much. Don't try and, you know, come up with some mathematical equation to do randomness, because it's not going to work very well. Just kind of go that one, you know. So it is completely random. Try and think about it too much. Generally, in my experience, it doesn't come out very well. So it's just better to be completely random with it. And do this one down here. So shift and left mouse button, drag it out, do a box select, and then we'll just do, let's say, this one. Like I say, don't try and overthink it. Just nice and random, like so. And then what I'm going to do is create another new material here. We'll call that one brick alt for alternative, and I'm just going to enter and assign. So now what we'll have is brick, which will be these ones, then the mortar, which will obviously be that, and then our brick alternative. Okay. So what I need to do then is separate all these parts out, because when I create my material ID through the GrabDoc add-on, it won't allow me, or it can't have multiple materials. It will only work with just the one material per object. So what I need to do is separate all these parts out into their own objects. So what we'll do then is we'll start with the brick, and we'll just select that. I'm just going to go P and separate by selection. Go back into object mode, and then we'll rename it. So this one will be brick, like so. Select the plane again, back into edit mode. Then we'll select brick alt. So we'll select those. P, separate by selection, back into object mode. And then this one here will be brick alt. And you want to name it somewhat appropriate to the material, because you'll need to delete the extra materials away after the fact. And then this one here will be the mortar, the only one that's left. So mortar. Okay. So this one here, we only want the mortar material, so I'm going to delete that one and that one. Brick alt. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, don't know what was going on there. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So this one I just want the brick alt, so we're just going to delete that. So mortar, brick alt, and then this one we just want the brick, so we'll delete that one and that one. Okay, so we've now just got the appropriate materials for each of the objects or the parts of the mesh. So we'll save it again. Always good to save at certain intervals when you've made big changes. Just saves a lot of time. If things don't work out, you don't have to repeat, go through the whole thing all over again. Just go back to a previous save. Okay, so what we're going to do then is see here. If I press N on my keyboard, and what I'm going to do is go to GrabDoc. I got this from Gumroad. As far as I'm aware, it was free when I got it. It might be paid for now, I don't know. There may even be a different version available. I haven't checked in a while. But it's really good for doing trim sheet work, things like that, which is what this really is all about, creating trim sheets for textures and things like that. So all you do is when you open up this, just click on Setup Scene, and what that will do is just create a new collection with all of the necessary parts in here that to work with for the GrabDoc add-on. Now what I have found with this, normally I would press 0 to go into camera view, but if I press 0, I get this, which is, you know, obviously not right. So what I would suggest to do is use the actual button here in the GrabDoc add-on, and then that will work. But once you've done that, if you leave that and press 0 on the numpad, the next time around it will actually work. So I don't know why that is, but it just seems to be a bit of a bug somewhere there. But if you use the button here, it will work perfectly fine. So all of this I'm just going to leave default. Does have the ability to use the tool bag baker, but that is something you have to buy separately, the actual engine. So as far as what I've used of the GrabDoc add-on, the Blender built-in baker works perfectly fine for this. But if you want to pay extra and get the tool bag baker, the engine for that, I forget how much it is, but it might give you better results, really, much higher resolution results or whatever else. But as far as I've, as far as I'm concerned, the built-in Blender one does a really good job. So I've never seen the reason to buy the toolbag version. So what we need to do is set up a path. So I'm just going to go here and go into my brick folder here. What I might do is create a new folder just to keep everything nice and tidy and separated. So I'm just going to call that grab for GrabDoc and click accept, and then we'll just put in here brick, something like that. And then what as I said before, I want to set up all my paths here. So the one I need to do manually, there are lots of different values you can change in here, but the others I tend to leave alone, don't mess with those. But the one that I need to actually do manually is the ID preview. If we click on the drop down arrow, it opens up a whole new thing. Now if you're doing something where it doesn't, it can be literally just a random ID method, then this one works perfectly fine. But I need to specify certain areas for what I want to get out of it. Now, theoretically, because I've got these as separate objects, that the random value potentially would do it for me. But what I'm going to do is let me just save that. If I go into the preview of this, we'll see what it looks like. So that's what it's going to give me basically under the random value. But I find that sometimes the colors are too close together, because that yellowy kind of green there is too close to this green. So you might be able to, make it do a new version of that. I don't know, but I've found, I don't want the height map, that sometimes it doesn't always give you the best value under random. The colors are too close together, so I always do it manually. And also under the random, no, actually forget that. I was going to say you can't adapt any of the values, but you can actually adapt the values on the random. But I don't generally use the random. Like I say, I always use material and then do it myself and add it in manually myself. So let's come out of there for now. And then what I'm going to do then is we'll select the brick, and I'm just going to add to selected. So we'll click there, and that will give me a value like so. And you can just keep clicking that until you get something you like. So that one's actually okay. We'll go with that. I'm going to click on the brick Alt, and we'll do that one. So you want that one to be completely different to the other one, like so. And then the mortar, and then do the same with that one and get it somewhat completely different to everything else. So just keep going until it gives you a value that you can use. I'm just trying to see here. I think that it might be everything's a little bit too low. So if I come out of the camera view here, one on the numpad to go in front of the graphic, I'm just going to do is shift select all of those, and I'm going to bring all of this up slightly because the actual plane here for the GrabDoc is interfering slightly. So I'm just going to go G, Z, and just move that up above the grid slightly. Then we'll go 0 back into here. That's better. So now if I select my mortar again, and I keep going, that's better. Okay, so that should work. That should work, I think. Might just change that. Let's do something like that, perhaps. Yeah, that could work. You want to have this obviously the value is completely different. You don't want to have them even remotely close in color to each other, because that won't work very well. I've had it before where it looks right, then I get it into Quixel Mixer and I'll have something like dark blue, light blue, grayish blue, you know, because the colors are too close together, and then that causes some bleed across other colors, and then you get some really big issues, and you can't specify individual areas properly. So make sure that the colors are completely separate. And then what you also want to do is make sure you've got no anti-aliasing, because if you have any samples in here, again, that will cause a bleed in the actual bake of the texture, and you'll get like the greens will merge slightly into this grayish whatever color that is, and again with the reds, and it'll all bleed in slightly. You'll get this kind of haze around the color, around the actual you know, each part of the mesh. You don't want that in the texture itself. So no anti-aliasing, and then you're good to go on that one. The rest of it you can just leave at default. I find that that works quite well. So make sure you've set up everything else, your export path, name it, and then resolution, always do 2048, but you can increase that to 4096 if you want to. I wouldn't necessarily go below 2048 because you want to get a good resolution. PNG, you can use others, but I find PNG works really well. And also, depending on the software that you're going to be working with, you might be limited to a certain, you know, particularly PNG, because the program that you're going to be working with might not support TIFF or TGA. So, but go with whatever's going to be, whichever's going to work for you. 16-bit color depth gives you really good results, or gives me good results, so I'm happy with that. Now once you've got everything set up how you want it to be, and everything looks good and all the rest of it, I think we're good there. We can export it out. Always worth, you know, again, like I say, save each step, so you don't have to keep repeating yourself. Now you don't want to have any kind of modifiers at this point, live modifiers, so make sure that you should have already done that anyway, but make sure that any modifiers are completely either removed or applied, because otherwise this won't work properly, especially if it's like subdivision, surface, or displace modifiers. It will get a bit upset. You can still do it, but you have to manually adapt the height maps and things like that. But I prefer to just work with no modifiers once I get to this stage. Have all live geometry, and I think that gives better results. So once you're happy with everything, just click export maps, and we now have, this is something that I've had a few times for some reason. I don't know why, but when I've applied the after I've applied the material IDs, I need to then go into here and actually select each one of these and click use nodes, like so. And sometimes that even breaks Blender. I don't know why that is, but we'll see what happens there. Hopefully it hasn't broken it this time. Sometimes I've had to shut down Blender and then restart it again. So we're going to export the maps. Now that should work. It might be because I've already had materials there and the ID maps are overriding those. Perhaps I should have deleted the materials first and then done the ID map once I had everything selected. That could be the reason why. Don't really know on that one, but it seems to, once I then reapply the nodes in the shader editor here, like so, just click use nodes. As soon as it puts all these back in here again, it seems to work fine after that. So we have our height map. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Bit repetitive there, but that's okay. Doesn't really matter. We have our material ID, ambient occlusion, curvature, and normal map. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, good, excellent. So now that we've got to this stage, then we're going to go into Quixel Mixer. So we'll just open up Quixel Mixer. Not quite as powerful as well, it's not actually anywhere near as powerful as Substance Designer in my opinion, but for a free program it is really, really good in my opinion. A few limitations here and there, but the version that I'm using 2021.1.1 beta, that may even have an update now, I don't know, has introduced the ability to use UDIMs, which is quite good. So when you come into here, you won't have any of this stuff. We'll actually delete that one. That's one I was playing around with earlier. I can actually delete that one as well. So you need to create a project. It does have sample mixes. So it comes with those, so you can open these up and play around with the values in there and experiment with all that sort of stuff, or even use those if they're of any use to you. But this one here, I'm going to create a new project first and then obviously name it. I'm just going to call it brick. Now once you have your project, you need to create a new mix. So again, we're just going to call that brick, like so. And what I actually should have done is shown you that. I keep pressing enter too quickly. But in that particular window, it shows you the resolution, the working resolution. This is just a working resolution. So if you have a slightly slower machine, you might want to select perhaps maybe 1024. If you go any lower than that, I think you won't get the desired result in the viewport to know how it's going to look on export. But again, you've got to work with what you've got to work with. But you can lower the resolution here because that's just the working resolution. When it comes to exporting the textures out, you can actually select what resolution you want them to be in on the export. So anyway, so I'm going to be working with a plane here, 2 meter by 2 meter. You can use whatever you want. So you've got 3D assets, a custom model, so you can import your custom model either in OBJ or FBX. You can also use a shadable. So if you want to see how something looks on a shadable, you can do that. Sometimes these are quite good to use. You can check for, you know, various different artifacting going on, especially when it comes to displacement maps and things like that on, you know, objects like these. But I'm just going to stick with the plane. And then what I'm going to do is bring in my textures that I just baked out from Blender. So I'm going to go edit texture sets. If you have the correct naming convention, I think you can import all of them, but I'm just going to do it manually. So I want my displacement map here, which was going to be my height map that I baked out. So we'll go into here. So I want height, and you can change the strength here. So if we remember in Blender, I was using 0.02, I think, but I think here it's going to be 0.2. Something like that. It's a little bit different in here than it is in Blender. I think that will work okay. I'm going to put in there 0.2 normal map, so we'll bring that one in. You can invert that on the X or the Y or both if you need to. Ambient occlusion, so we'll bring that one in. Curvature, we'll use that. That's fine. The curvature map will help when it comes to things like dirt, moss, grime, things like that. It will actually, you know, use that texture to put those particular values in place. It does help, but it's not required, but I always use it if I can. And then my material ID, so we'll bring that one in. And as soon as you bring that in, check your material ID colors over here. If you have like, you know, pastel green, bright green, dark green, if you've got what you're looking for, if you've created 3 solid colors like I did, then you want to have 3 solid colors here. If you've got white, light white, dark white, grey white, and bright red, light, you know, dark red, or whatever else, if you've got more than what you created, then you need to redo your material ID texture, because you will have some problems when you go to mask out certain areas with particular materials or values. But I'm good there. That's good. Excellent. So we can close that one down now. And you can already see we've got some something going on here. Up here you can actually view the displacement. So I can turn that off and on so you can see what the height map is doing. Again, sometimes I've found that height maps can cause some issues, artifacting, things like that. So In some cases, I will actually work without it visible in the viewport. I don't believe it's a problem with the actual displacement texture. I believe it's a problem with how it's rendered here in Quixel Mixer. I could be wrong on that, but I found that even, if I deactivate it here in the viewport, do whatever I've got to do, and then export, the export textures work perfectly fine. But if I activate the displacement here, sometimes it will give me some artifact in the viewport only, but it doesn't affect my output after, my output textures. So maybe I just got really lucky there, I don't know. But anyway, so now we have this. What we want to do is apply some materials to give us the effect of bricks, or whatever. So we're going to go over to the layers tab here, and I'm going to actually just do this real quick. So I'm going to use smart materials for this. There is actually one smart material for brick that comes with Quixel Mixer, so that's the one I'm going to use. But you can do all sorts of things. You can add surface layers and actually create your own through different masks and all that sort of stuff. But the smart materials are really good because they have all of that already set up, and you can then just adjust things, tweak it a little bit to get the desired effect that you want. So I'm going to click on here to add a smart material, and then from the search window over here, I'm just going to type in brick, and as you can see, we just have the one brick surface. If I was to perhaps maybe, I could type in there something like stone, for example, and it would give me various different stone values. So I could use these and then change them to make it look like brick. If I wanted to, I could go in here and type in there rock, and that would again give me various different values. So I could potentially manipulate these to look like brickwork. You could do all sorts of things there. I could type in there, I don't know if, no, it would be concrete, I suspect. So I could do concrete, something like that, and then choose one of these and adapt that to make it look like brickwork, whatever you need to do there. But as I said, it comes with a brick texture or brick smart material. That's the one I'm going to use. So you just click on that and it will load all the relevant parameters in, and you'll go, oh my god, that looks horrible. So this is where you need to play around with the masks and adjust things accordingly and whatever else. So under this one here for the moss, if I actually turn that off, you can see that we now have some sort of brick texture going on and whatever else. But if I activate that and click on the mask here and bring up the mask stack over here, you can see we have a breakup mask, and we also have this bottom mask. Now I'm assuming that this bottom mask is there to actually paint the mask in yourself, but again, I'm not going to do that, especially not on the video, because that's just going to take far too long. If I actually turn the render off there, you can see that goes away, but it keeps my moss on the brickwork, and I would like to keep the moss intact. I could just deactivate the whole thing, but I want to keep the moss there really. So by just turning that off, it keeps the moss using this particular breakup mask, but this one here is no longer viewable. And in all honesty, what I would do here is just right click and delete it. So you don't need it, unless you want to go through the go through the effort of obviously painting in your own mask and whatever else, if you know how to do that. I never do it very well, so I just don't bother. Just do it all through this. Just use what I've got here and get rid of that. And you can obviously play around with all these values, so we can turn off certain parts here. So I might turn off the grout, so now it doesn't have any grout in the actual brickwork here, and whatever else. That might be something, because I might add my own in, so we don't want this one to be causing some problems, because obviously, as you can see here, it's going to go up the brickwork slightly, and I don't want that. I don't want that effect. So what I might potentially do is actually turn that one off. For now, I'm going to turn the visibility off, and then I'll know whether I can, if I need to delete that after the fact. So I can turn the visibility of the dirt off, and that will give me a different effect again. So I might not want that to be quite as heavy on the dirt. Just go with the moss, all that sort of stuff. But I'm going to keep the dirt for now. But we'll just deactivate the visibility of the grout, because I'm going to add my own in. So we'll just go with something like that for now. And then what I'm also going to do here is I'm going to add in an ID mask. So I'm going to right click, add ID mask, and then I want to actually select whatever I'm the bricks that I want to select. So you might need to go back into Blender. So we've got the red is our main brick, and then the green is our alternative brick. So I'm going to go red, and as you can see, that's now applied that to just those bricks, like so. And then what I'm going to do is right click, and I'm going to go duplicate layer. And then in this one here, I'm going to deactivate that, and I'm going to choose the green, okay, like so. But I'm going to actually expand this out and go to the brick surface and change the albedo value to something different, so that those alternative bricks, as you can see in the viewport here, have a slightly different texture to the other ones. You can obviously play around with that to your heart's content to get the desired effect that you want. Yeah, you can. There's lots of different values you can adjust to. I've done this and I've actually got it to a specific point. I thought actually I'd quite like that to have it on all the other bricks, and not that way around. So I'll do that, and then perhaps maybe play around with the placement of these, or change the values around, or whatever I need to do to get the desired effect that I want to get out of it. So this one here I might switch them around. So I'll take that value and put it into there instead, or whatever works really. So for instance, this one here, I could do that one, change that to the red, and then this one here I'll change to the green. So it's like that. So it's completely switched around kind of thing, because that might look a little bit better, and just have the odd brick there which is slightly darker. I think that actually looks a little bit better. And then what we can do is add another smart material for the grout. So we'll go add smart material, and what I'll do here is I'll just type in there concrete or something like that, or cement, or let's do concrete. So we've got something like that, and then maybe I'll do let's do bare concrete layered, something like that perhaps, and we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so that's quite aggressive, and the actual position of these, so this will be a top layer and this will be the bottom layer, so you need to move these around to get the desired effect that you want from them. So that might actually be a little bit aggressive. Don't know if I actually want that to be quite as aggressive as that, but at the moment that's obviously covering everything. So again, what we can do here is to add in our ID mask and then select the white, which is the grout, and that will just basically put it into these areas here, like so. So now we've got this kind of mortar effect going on between the brickwork and whatever else. So I think that looks really good. Not too bad at all. I'm quite happy with that. That looks really good. So we've used just smart materials to do this in Quixel Mixer, and using the material ID texture, we can break up certain things and get some break up that repetitiveness of it all. Obviously it's got the dirt and the moss layer on there as well, which helps, but sometimes I find it can be quite nice to just have a few bricks in here which you control completely separate to everything else, just to kind of change things up a little bit. And you can obviously adapt that to your heart's content on what you want to get out of it. So that would be this one here. So I go in here if I wanted to and just play around with the values. I might maybe want to make that a little bit closer to the other color, or whatever. Perhaps maybe, I don't know, don't want it quite as dark, so we might maybe make it a bit brighter perhaps, something like that. I don't like to have too dark, the texture's too dark. I think that looks better. That looks much better. Too dark the other way was, I think. I think that looks a lot better. There we go, perfect. So once you're obviously happy with the settings that you've got and all the rest of it, we then just need to export all the textures out. So we just go to the export panel here. You could always, it might be worth saving it just to, so if you want to come back and obviously change some stuff, save your project. So we'll click save, and you've got that there. You can come back to and obviously adapt things if you need to. So set up your folders. So we'll set up our folder here. So I'm just going to go into brick, and I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call this mixer, so I know that these came from Quixel Mixer. I'll go into there, save, and I always like to create the subfolders. So you put the asset name in here, brick, and then when it creates subfolders, if you're doing lots of different things, it will actually create a subfolder called brick within that mixer folder, and then you can keep everything completely separated for whatever you need to work with, but not 100% required. You could, in this particular case I don't need it, so I'll just uncheck that for now, and then choose whatever workflow you want to have. So metalness maps or specular. Most things now are metalness, metalness workflow. So you have your roughness and your metalness and all that sort of stuff. If you do a specular workflow, it's more about gloss and specular. But as I say, I would just go with the metalness workflow, and then we don't actually need gloss, so we can leave that one deselected. So I just want the albedo, roughness, normal, displacement, ambient occlusion, and metalness. Change your output resolution to whatever you want. I'm going to go with 2048. And then we can just export those out. So once we've got everything set up there, export to disk. And away we go. So I'm just going to minimize that down. So if we go into here, into Mixer, we now have our textures. The displacement, for some reason, always gets exported out as an EXR. It does actually say that in here, EXR. I don't know if that might be something in one of the settings that I need to change it. Or it might just be the fact that I've got GIMP installed that it does that. I don't know. But it's really straightforward. Just open it up in GIMP, or whatever program you need to that supports EXR. And just save it out as a PNG. So just open it up and then go File, Export As. And then just change the actual extension to PNG here, and then just export it out like so. Then we can close that down, and we now have our brick displacement PNG. So, not sure why it gives me an EXR, but it does. So it might be because it's a high resolution, or it might retain something in an EXR that a PNG can't. I don't know. But irregardless, I want it as a PNG, so that's what I'm going to use. So we go back into Blender here. I'm just going to do that, and then I'm going to start a new scene. So we'll just go New General. Let's close that down like so, and then we can just add in our textures. So very, very quickly here, if I can, I'm just going to use those textures to set up what we need to set up here. So I'm just going to go Shift A, Mesh, Plane, go into Edit mode, and we'll subdivide this for the displacement. So I'm just going to go 100 on there, and then we'll do a subdivision surface. So we'll do subdivision surface 2, simple. Same as what I did before. We need to do this for the displacement, as I say. And then what we can do is drag out a new window and go to shader editor, add a material here. And then what I'm going to do, because I've got Node Wrangler add-on, I click on the principal BSDF shader, left shift, left control and T, and this will bring up the principal texture set window, and I can then go into desktop, brick, mixer, and I can select all of these textures here and actually bring them in. Now it probably won't do that one. Should do the others though. I'll probably have to bring the ambient occlusion in separately. So we'll do that, and then we should have here albedo, metalness, roughness, normal map, and displacement. Awesome. So if I go to this one, just drag that down a little bit and drag that down to there. There we go. So we now have got all that set up, and if I then go into here, we should see all that where we want it to be. And we can see what we have here, so it looks pretty good. And then we need to be in Cycles engine for it to actually work with displacement, and also we need to go to the material properties and come down to settings, and change it from bump only to displacement and bump. And then it will actually give you the correct values for bump. If you don't do that, it won't actually work correctly. So we now have our texture in there. Awesome. And let's just double check something here. Okay, so I'm going to probably need to go into material preview, not material preview, render, because Eevee doesn't seem to like this very much for some reason. So I'm just going to add in a light. So I'm going to go Shift A light sun, and we'll just increase the strength up to like maybe 5. And I'm going to go into rendered mode here. And what we should have is our displacement. There we go. Awesome. As you can see, we've now got all of our brick texture and whatever else, and we've got our mortar and all that sort of goodness. Okay. So then it's just a case of adjusting your values. So you don't want the scale to be that high. So 0.2 perhaps, something like that might give you a desired effect. There we go. So we've got some nice brick texture going on and whatever else. That might be a little bit too aggressive. So you could go maybe 0.05, something like that. And just kind of play around with the values until you get the desired effect that you want. Okay. And you know, that looks pretty good in my opinion. That come out quite well. Obviously you can make various changes in Mixer, in Quixel Mixer, to give you different results and whatever else, and then just kind of play around with the values there to your desire, to whatever you want to get out of that. And that's pretty much that. But obviously with this particular setup, it still does require all of the geometry there to make it work. If I don't have the geometry, it's not going to give me the height map, the displacement. That won't work. So what I'm going to do now is actually use another add-on for Blender. So I'm just going to go File, New, General, and we'll just start a new fresh scene here again. So I'm going to use another add-on here, which actually works with Parallax Mapping, just to show you how that works with just a flat plane with just 4 verts, but using Parallax to actually give the desired effect. So I'm going to press N to bring out my side window here, and I'm going to go into Machine, and I've got Decal Machine 2.4.0. This is a paid add-on. I'm not an affiliate with any of these people, but I paid for this. It's a really good add-on for trim sheet work and things like that, but you can make decals and all sorts of different things with it. I'm only just very, scratching the surface of this add-on at the moment, just getting used to how it all works and everything else. So I'm going to go into, well, it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to go into the Cycles engine here because it actually makes it, the bake settings over to GPU. I don't think it actually matters for what I'm going to do here, but I just like to see that it says GPU because my CPU is getting a bit old and tired now. So I want to use my GPU for as much as I can. But anyway, so what I'm going to do here is create a trim sheet that I can then work with Parallax. So I'm going to click on trim sheet, new, and initialize. This will then create my plane here. Let's go back into solid shape mode for now. So I'm going to clear out any textures that I've got loaded in already, which I've been playing around with other trim sheets. And I've done this already a few times, so I'll have various different versions. Actually, what I might do, just to make sure that I don't get any weirdness going on here, let's go all, and I'm just going to go into, if I can see it in here, I'm just going to get rid of the other versions. Decal Machine, there we go. Let's open this one up, and what I'm going to do is get rid of these. So don't want that one, I don't want that one. There we go. Okay, save preferences. Right, so we're starting afresh. So what I'm going to do is load in the textures. So load textures, going to go to the folder, into Mixer, and I'm just going to load all these in. So I want that one, not that one, that one needs to be PNG, and that one. I'm going to open, and I'm going to go load, and I'm going to go back to the folder here, into grab doc, and I want the curvature from there, the original curvature. We've got 7 textures, okay? So need to name this to something appropriate, so I'm just going to call it brick. That's fine for this. and it will give you a resolution here, but that will update depending on the resolution of the texture that you load in. So from here, I'm just going to basically fill all this stuff in. So I want my normal map, and you can see it's now updated to 2048 by 2048. So I want ambient occlusion, curvature, like so, height map. So I'm just going to do displacement for that, color, which is our albedo, metallic. So we'll load that one in, and then roughness, like so. I don't have emission, alpha, subset, or material 2, so I'm not going to worry about any of those. But that's pretty much that. So now if I go into material preview, we will have this, and you can see automatically I've got 2 tris, 1 face, and 4 verts, but I've got all of my height map data because it's using Parallax to actually generate that. And I can change the parallax here in the height value, so drag it all to 0, and it's just using the normal map, and I can then just drag that out to create my parallax. Give the image the height of play around with the height, but there's a point where that will get broken. It will stretch it too much and it will break it. So obviously there is limitations to how far you can go with that. So I'm going to just set it to an appropriate value. Something like that will do for now, and then we need to trim all this up using the decal machine add-on. So I'm just going to press plus on here. I want to create that as a panel, and I'm going to duplicate that and then create an empty. If I go 7 on numpad for top-down view here, I'm just going to drag these into the center somewhere. This will be the empty. So we'll just do something like that. That's fine. So now that I've got all that, I don't need that. So that's an empty. So we'll come down to here, trim it up, and it will do its thing. Depending on the complexity of everything, this might take a while. And then we can create our trim sheet library, like so. So for getting all this stuff now, I'm just going to go File, New, General, completely start a whole new one. We'll close that menu down. So we're in a completely brand new, fresh Blender file here. And then what I can do here is actually load that in. So I can just go D on the keyboard and then come over to my brick and just click, and I've now got my brick. Alt-G to put it back on the grid, and you can see it has everything there. The only thing it will be missing in this particular scenario is the color, so you can add that in manually. In this particular case, we just come over to the shader editor, and you can see all of the complexity of what's going on. This is your parallax group for all the parallax mapping and everything else, and all the different masks and whatever else. All you need to do here is just go Shift A and then texture, image texture, connect that one up into there, and then go into Mixer, load in your albedo texture, and you'll have everything set up there. You might need to play around with the if you decide to go for this particular add-on. Again, I'm not affiliated with this at all. You might need to play around with the metallic and the roughness to get the right values and whatever else, but otherwise, that's that. And then we've now got a nice brick texture all created and set up for us. Excellent. So now what I can do is press D and adjust, and if I then press D again, this will be the parallax. So I can drag to the left and it will take the parallax down to nothing. I can drag to the right and bring the parallax out, so I can actually create quite a height on the brickwork there. But again, it will kind of break things a little bit. Sometimes because it's all based on viewing angle and light bouncing off of various areas and all sorts of things. So you can't go too extreme with parallax because it's stretching the texture, if you like, across the normals, and it will break things in all sorts of manners of ways. So there's a limit to what it can do. So hold down Shift, which will give you a much smoother. If you just do it normally, it will be all over the place. So you can come in here, press X to reset it. So we go D for parallax, X to reset. If you drag across to the left, takes the parallax all the way down to 0, and then you can hold down shift and bring it back until you get, you know, a desired effect, if you like. And then we've got our brickwork and everything there looking really, really good. And that's basically how that works. So very, very quickly here again, if I let's do file, new, general, and get rid of that. I'm going to go shift A, mesh, cube. If I then let's do 1 on the numpad, tab into edit mode, face select. We'll select this, just this face, and then D, brick, hold down Alt and click, and that will then load the brick into there like so. And then you can make various different adjustments on that. And then we can load that up on all of the others as we see fit. So, you know, you can, however you want to do that. So for example, I could do a loop select of all of those, D, let's do this one over here, and then do like so, and it will load the brick up onto there like that. And then we can, you know, nice tileable brick texture, wrapping nicely around in all of the different areas, and looks really, really good in my opinion. So that's pretty much how that works. And if you want to adjust the parallax here, you have to do that in the shader editor. So we just bring out the window here, go to the shader editor, and then just come down to the parallax group, and you can adjust the amount directly in here. So you can bring it down, bring it back, and then bring it back all the way to 0, hold down shift and drag slowly to the right to get the desired effect that you want. So perhaps maybe something like that. And then you've got a nice brick wall texture, or a nice brick wall, I guess, now that it's all, you know, put together and completed and whatever else. Okay, hopefully what I've shown there is of some interest. Again, I'm not affiliated at all with any of the add-ons that I've used here, but I find them really, really good, and I enjoy using them. So hopefully, you know, you might get something from it. And yeah, there we go. I'm Sure Wizard. Thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.